Hey there, NASCAR fans. Welcome to this episode here of the Highline Podcast. He's, of course, William, and I'm, of course, Jason. And we're here to preview the upcoming Hollywood Casino 400. But, of course, we'll always make sure we recap last week. And we'll do so with the Darlington race there. William, how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. Last week, the NASCAR Cup Series went out to Darlington, one of my favorite tracks, and we saw a phenomenal race, and yet a very important race for the drivers in the playoffs. We saw Briscoe struggling, Chastain struggling, Harvick caught on fire at once, Kyle Busch blew up, Elliott was involved in a wreck. A lot of big storylines coming out of Darlington involving the playoff drivers, and it's just going to make for us viewers the next 2 weeks a lot more interesting. Kansas is always tight there, especially with the next gen car. We do not know what's going to go on there. I mean, at Bristol, you don't even know what's going to go on there. You're going to see a lot of temperance flare these next 2 weeks. And as a fan of the sport, I am loving it.
Yeah, I actually looked at it. I like how you said Darlington was one of your favorites. When I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, I went out to Darlington and caught a race there and had a phenomenal time. Absolutely loved the track, loved the venue, loved everything about that. It always provides, I think, great racing right there. And how about this past week at the Cookout Southern 500 with the 43 getting back into victory lane? Incredible. Absolutely good stuff there, Eric Jones. I mean, he'd been good all season long. You know what I mean? Like, he'd been popping up. He pops up in the top 10s, has pace at a lot of these tracks of the season. It was nice to see that 43 get back into victory lane, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was refreshing to see someone win it that really was up there in points. And I don't know, Eric Jones deserved the win. He held off a hard-charging Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. It's not like the win was given to him, like Austin Dillon was given to him at Daytona 2 weeks ago. But Eric Jones, I'm glad to see him finally win. That team right there, Petty GMS, has put a lot of money in that organization these last 2 years. And for them to finally go to victory lane has got to be such a big reliever. And next year when they bring on Noah Gragson, as an outsider here, I looked at them as dark horses to make the playoffs, both drivers, Gragson and Eric Jones. But that's for next year, though. But this right now is building up a lot of momentum heading into 2023. They're not in the playoffs. They're racing for fun. They're racing loose, and I like that, and that's what got them to victory lane. They didn't have to be so uptight making calls. They were gutsy, and it worked out.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like how Eric Jones was able to do it. You mentioned how he's able to hold off Hamlin. We've seen a few times this season that, and I know lap traffic played in a part there in those last handful of laps, but there's a few more laps. Hamlin probably is going to go ahead and get around Eric Jones. But, hey, it's a 500. It's not the 505 or whatever it is. So Eric Jones was able to do that. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. Not only was it a good race, tons of drama. We got to talk about that. And the drama really plays into why this race was so good, you know, now that you're in the playoffs right there. Obviously, Chase Elliott, he was the first one to have issues with getting in the accident with your boy Chase Briscoe and having to bow out. So really, you know, I mean, you thought like he was one of the sure guys. We go into Kansas, and all 16 guys, nobody's got it locked up. Obviously, you didn't get a winner. You got the winner in Eric Jones, and nobody had like a great point say. Even the best guy, Chase Elliott, stumbled with having a bad result due to that, you know, accident right there. Kevin Harvick catching on fire. Man, you want to talk about William? 4 drivers below the cutoff pre-Darlington: Suarez, Cindric, Bowman, Dillon. Now it's Cindric, Dillon, Briscoe, and Harvick. 2 different names have creeped up in there. That's the drama you're getting. You talked about, what about Truex and Kyle Busch? 2 best cars all day long. You could add Logano in there if you're talk about stage 1 and part of stage 2, but large in part, if you just want to talk about all 3 stages, it was Joe Gibbs Racing, and in that, it was Truex and Kyle Busch. They had issues. You know me, I was laughing at Kyle Busch. I know I'm sitting here wearing a Kyle Busch shirt, but I was laughing that his engine blew under caution instead when they're running, you know, 100 plus miles an hour. And then Kyle Larson, how about him battling back with issues, with spinning, and gets himself, what was it, a P12, P13, whatever it was. I thought those are finishes that like can save, you know, your playoff run as opposed to where like an Elliott comes down. I thought Larson was great damage control on Sunday.
Yes, you're exactly right with Kyle Larson. I looked at Ross Chastain also. Chastain got 20th place, if I'm not mistaken. But he was once 4 laps down.
Yes.
He turned nothing into something very, very easily. 20th place is a lot better than 30th. I know on paper that don't look good at all, but, hey, he made something out of nothing. And Kyle Larson, he did the same exact thing. He was many laps down, but he battled back with engine issues and still got a decent result, decent enough to gain points on his competitors such as Briscoe, Harvick, Elliott, and a couple others, Kyle Busch. But that was a good day for Kyle Larson. I'm sure he's going to have a good outing in Kansas, and he shouldn't have to worry too much about heading into Bristol and knowing whether or not he's going to make it to the round of 12. I think he's going to have a great weekend here and pretty much solidify himself in the round of 12.
Yeah, I do think he's definitely going to have a good weekend. I'm assuming we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth when we get over to the Hollywood Casino 400, but I'm expecting more chaos, more craziness. Like I said, nobody's short up their places, so all 16 guys. Normally you get the one thing where, like, the guy can kind of look ahead to see what's in round, the next, like the round of 12 or the round of 8 and kind of tweak their car to get them ready. Nobody can do that. Nobody's locked up. You were with me. It's probably going to be more crazy, more mayhem.
Yeah, exactly. I expect a lot of wrecks here this weekend in Kansas. A lot of drivers are on edge, and they're afraid if they have a bad race here, they're going to have to be in the must win in Bristol, and they do not want to do that at all. So they're going to try to go out for the win here in Kansas, and they're going to push it all and put it all on the table to go to victory lane because you do not, I repeat, do not want to go to Bristol in a must win situation. The odds of that happening to any of the drivers out there are pretty much slim to none unless Briscoe and Harvick, the bottom two drivers, just finish dead last. And I just don't think we're going to head into Bristol with any driver in a must-win. They're going to be all close on points. And I just think that's going to make a better race for us viewers when they go to Bristol on a Saturday night under the lights. So I think this weekend, though, all playoff drivers are going to be competitive, and we don't have to worry about a must-win situation in Bristol.
Yeah, I messaged you. What about the at Darlington? I messaged you during the race. How did Kyle Busch? What is he showing some? He's showing some maturity. He didn't go off in his post-race interview. I thought for sure he was just gonna, just let the viewership have it. I'm surprised he bit his tongue right there. Kevin Harvick, he did not bite his tongue. He was not so happy with the fire issues and the persistent issues with these next-gen cars.
I'll say this though, Kyle Busch was mature. And I like that. It's a sign of him growing up. But also, you got to think about he has a son, Braxton, who is racing, and he has a little temper from time to time if you keep up with some of his stuff. And Kyle Busch wants to be the perfect role model for him, which I respect. Mm-hmm. And he held himself under control in the interview. He's leading by example to his son and all of his fans out there. So, bravo, Kyle Busch. He's grown up a lot. Kevin Harvick, on the other hand, you really can't blame him at all for calling out NASCAR. NASCAR is wanting to go out this next-gen car and be as cheap as possible, and they're willing to take the risk of drivers possibly getting hurt. Kurt Busch got hurt with a concussion because of cheap parts. They were wanting to cut back on spending and spend less and have less on the car, and Kurt Busch has a concussion, more than likely out for the year, and possibly retiring because of that concussion. And then you had Chris Buescher catch on fire at the Indianapolis road course because of a cheap part there. And Chase Briscoe caught on fire one time, and Brad Keselowski, then Kevin Harvick. A lot of Fords. It's the Fords, I'm telling you, that are having these issues. The Fords are, struggling with this next-gen car production. And NASCAR has to do something here. They have to because this is getting out of hand, and it's costing a lot of teams a lot of money.
I tell you, one driver that I thought maybe you were going to mention and you didn't was the 51 there of Cody Ware. He said in a post-race interview he was feeling the effects of the first wreck. I bet he was feeling it, and that's what caused the second wreck. I thought he was – I'm not saying he was concussed or dizzy, but I bet he was feeling it, and that's why, he had a second incident in that one that, eventually knocked him out. So, you hate to see it with these guys. I mean, this is their safety.
I do want to say this, though. If you remember back at the beginning of the year, RFK Racing, the 6 car in general, was penalized because they were making their own parts for the lug nuts. That was because they felt like NASCAR's introduction of the parts were not good enough to keep them safe, and they decided to come up with their own, and they got penalized for it. So I'm telling you, the teams already know NASCAR's in the wrong and are going out there behind their backs and building stuff. NASCAR cannot lose it all and go after them when they find out that that's happening. They got to keep it under control and say, hey, I see where you're coming from. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to make this next-gen car a little bit safer for the following race. They got to do stuff like that, and talks are not happening. And I'm sure there's a lot of teams and drivers in the garage that are getting very frustrated. And, not looking good at all.
Well, just give them the off season. Maybe it's hard to implement changes, on the fly. Although I did see a tweet there by Jeff, that athletic reporter, that they implemented some changes to prevent the fire issues from happening up. So they're willing to make changes on the fly, but I would expect this is going to be a busy off season for NASCAR with their first season here in the next gen car.
I'll say this, though. I get very frustrated because I hate seeing drivers like Kurt Busch get a concussion because of the safety of the car, and Harvick and Briscoe getting on fire. I think enough is enough here. They've had all year long to fix these issues. At the beginning of the year, they had issues with the tires. Remember, they were cut down.
Oh, yeah.
And we still had that issue from time to time, but that's gotten better. And the loose wheels and falling off. They adapted to them somewhat relatively quickly. And they're not at all putting an effort to look into these fires, because these fires are getting out of control, and a lot of drivers are getting very sick in the car, if you know what I mean, when they breathe some of the stuff in. NASCAR's got to do something. And I felt at the beginning of the year they rushed it all. The next-gen car was nowhere near ready to go racing because it's unsafe, and I'm sure there's multiple drivers out there. I know for a fact Chase Briscoe will back me up when I say this. But the next-gen car is not safe at all. He said it at Phoenix in the early season test, and he got a lot of heat for it, but that's the truth. The next-gen car was extremely rushed and not thought out, and the car is very cheap.
Unfortunately, it happens in a lot of industries, and it happens in society. Money drives things, and the motive, one big motive of going to this car was to save the teams, their pennies, and to make it cheaper and make it more affordable and what have you. And the expense of that has come to driver safety, unfortunately. So they got to find that balance of cheap or cheaper, but we got to keep the drivers obviously safety. So they got to find the balancing point.
Yes, like in the NFL, for instance, we're getting all these players going into retirement that suffered multiple concussions in their career, and they're getting really sick, if you know what I mean, mentally sick, and that's just driving them crazy. NASCAR does not want to go down that same path. They got to make these cars safer and keep the drivers less likely to get a concussion when they hit the wall, because it's totally unacceptable, and a driver should not have to go into a weekend wondering if they're going to get hurt because of a wreck. That's the last thing that should be on their mind. And I'm afraid that's their mindset heading into every single weekend, especially your Daytona, Talladegas, and Atlantas. It's got to get fixed.
All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and turn the page. What's on our mind right now is the Hollywood Casino 400 at the Kansas Speedway. I always try and give you guys the closest comp if you're trying to do your own research at home to win the NBC Sports Predictor app, or maybe you're like me, you're putting in some real sports bets. If you want a closest comp, probably Michigan. Kansas can kind of be viewed as maybe like a mini Michigan. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a good race here. We saw what happened back in May. Kurt Busch was really strong in that. Kyle Larson won this playoff race last season. I'm going to propose a question to you, and then I'm going to give you some stats that maybe can give you a contrary. I assume you're going to be on Team Toyota, as there was 5 Toyotas in the top 6 in the spring race. Do you think Toyotas can do that again?
I think the Toyotas will be quick, but I do not believe that they will get the job done. I'll say, though, I'm not going to say they're not going to go out there and not be competitive at all. I believe they will, but they will not get the win when it's all said and done.
Okay. The reason I asked you that is I looked at, I think Michigan is a close comp. Let me run through this right here. So in the spring race, 5 of the top 6 were Toyotas. If you go to fall 2021, 4 of the top 6 were Chevys. If you go to the spring of 2021, 3 of the top 4 were Fords. It seems like we've had a different manufacturer show up each and every single time and hit the setup and dominate the race, so to speak, with putting those amount of manufacturers in the top 5, top 6, whatever it is. So just because we had Toyotas dominate in the spring with 5 in the top 6 doesn't mean we're going to get that again here in this fall race. And keep in mind, in Michigan, a few weeks ago, where obviously Kevin Harvick, man, he got a nice win right there in Michigan. There were no Chevys in the top 6 in Michigan. Again, to me, if you're going to compare it, doesn't mean Michigan is Kansas, but I think it's a good comparison.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Kansas does race like a Michigan. We will see pack racing for on a restart for the first 3 to 4 laps, and then they'll spread out. But those are the times where big wrecks can happen, and a lot of drivers can be put on the DVP, the damaged vehicle policy, and it could ultimately put them out the race like it did Chase Elliott. So stay on top of everything on restarts. That's all I got to say to all the drivers out there. Do not be involved in a wreck.
Pretty sure I saw didn't they increase that DVP clock from 8 to 10, or was it 6 to
It
10?
was 6 to 10,
6 to
6
10.
to 10 minutes.
6 to 10, yes,
I,
yeah.
I believe
If
for
they can't fix
playoff for playoff purposes, I believe that it should be unlimited. I believe that they should have the ability to go to the garage and fix it up right. Because there are people out there spending their hard-earned money to go to a race. And for them, let's say they see one of their drivers wreck on the first lap and they're done for the day. That's not a good feeling at all. So NASCAR has to do something to counteract that. And I believe for the playoffs, I know they don't want to do it during the regular season, which I can see why, because it increases the chances of another wreck from that driver and possibly others can be involved. But in the playoffs, they should be given unlimited time. And, yes, I believe, but they should change that to unlimited. 10 is not enough. Chase Elliott, his damage was bad, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't bad enough to take him out of the race. If he was able to fix it, he can salvage a top 30 finishes instead of finishing dead last. So that's all I got to say.
Good point right there. All right, when each and every single week when we prepare for this show, we always try and figure out which drivers will be contenders, which one could potentially take that checkered flag. We've got a long list this week. A lot of those guys are playoff drivers. A lot of our viewing audience probably thinks the playoff drivers will be strong once again. So I'm going to ask you, and my guy, I'll give you my guy first, actually. Which non-playoff driver do you think could possibly be the best? I put Bubba Wallace in that category. Again, we mentioned how the Toyotas were strong in spring. He was really strong, remember, back in Michigan. Remember, that was in that incredible run where he was getting, top 5s, top 10s, it seemed like every single week. I'll maybe look for Bubba Wallace in the 45 to maybe have a nice run. Who do you think? Again, let's not do a playoff driver. Everybody thinks the playoff drivers will probably do pretty damn strong. Who do you got here outside the playoff drivers?
All right, it's going to be pretty lame here, but Martin Truex Jr., he is so darn good at Kansas. He's won here in the past. Truex is easily going to be the best one out there that's not in the playoffs.
Man, I was hurting for him this week. I was hurting for him this week when he had the power steering issues and it caused him to eventually go out. And then obviously you had Kyle Busch, go out right behind him. But man,
did you see?
He's
did you see how?
Darlington. Huh?
Did you see how emotional he was in his post-race interview? That was crazy. I've never seen that from him before. It hasn't gone
his way. I mean, he said it accurately. He's right. He's like, we've been there. It's just we've had things go against us. Is what he was essentially getting at. And I mean, he's right on. They've been there. There's a reason why he just missed the cutoff line getting in the playoffs. He's been right there a lot of weeks, and he's had just things go with him. The things have been out of his control, like the power steering issue this past weekend. So, all right. So you like Truex? Well, notice, but we both picked a Toyota. Notice we both picked the Toyota?
Yeah, we picked the Toyota, but they're not in the playoffs, so.
No, I know. But speaking of Bubba Wallace, and I'm not one where it's, hell, everybody knows I'm a soccer guy, an NFL guy, I'm a NASCAR guy. I don't watch any pre-race, pre-game shows. I don't watch that stuff. I haven't heard it, at least I didn't hear it from this past week watching the race from the announcers. How does Bubba Wallace moving the 45 affect his sponsorships, right? Because the 23, do you know more of that? I'm just curious.
All right, I can explain it there. All right, so at the end of the year, when the playoffs start, you had the 16 original drivers. Mm-hmm. But you also had the owners' playoffs.
Not in terms of that. I get the owners. I'm just saying the guys that said, I want to sponsor Bubba Wallace in the 23. Now he's not in the 23. He's in the 45. I'm talking about sponsors. I understand.
Yeah, he's still – but here's what I was getting to, though. They decided to put Bubba in the 45. And for them to do that, he had to get the okay from the sponsors. They were not going to do that behind their back and go to the 45. And I'm sure the hardest one to convince had to have been Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper, I know how crazy this sounds, but Dr. Pepper loves to have 23 because it has 23 on their can. And Bubba Wallace is no longer in the 23. So I'm sure that took a little while to sort out there so he can go to the 45 because I believe Dr. Pepper is on the car either this weekend or next weekend in Bristol, one of the two. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But, hey, I think that what kind of held it back is something small like that. Sponsorship does a lot of talking in the sports world these days, and I believe that's what held him back. But, yes, Bubba Wallace went to the 45 to replace Kurt Busch so they can maximize it because at the end of the year, if the 45 finishes 11th in points in the Owners' Championship, they will get a lot more money than they would finishing 16th. So a smart decision by the business side of things, and
For
there you
sure.
go.
For sure. For sure. Okay. All right. One last question here before we jump into our picks here on the NBC Sports Predictor app. We had a non-playoff driver win last week. Are we going to see that again this week? I don't think so. Not for me. I think a playoff
No,
driver gets it, right? You're with me?
no,
A
no,
playoff driver.
no, no new winner.
No new winner. Okay. I guess it couldn't have to be a new winner. It could be Eric Jones, but yeah, I hear you. Well, it would only be Eric Jones for that sake of the matter. All right, good. I agree with you as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump on now to the NBC Sports Predictor app. This is, of course, where you can win $10,000. They give you 3 stages. You got to pick the driver to finish best amongst the stage, and then you also got to give them a top 3 all season long. I'm giving away $25 to the winner of the Winning Bets League. If you need that league information, you can grab it from the video description. Let's take a look and see who won last week. How about a 3-way tie? What do we do when there's a 3-way tie? We take that $25 and we roll it over to the next week. That means right here, this Kansas Hollywood Casino 400, it's worth $50. $50 if we can have one winner. So big week, folks. Big week. Let's go ahead and throw our picks up, and then let's talk about it. We were pretty similar here on the stages. In stage 1, we had to pick between Bell, Byron, Chastain, and Logano. I know why I picked Logano. Why did you do it?
I picked Logano because I like the consistency he's starting to have as of lately. I believe he's starting to come into form, and he's obviously leading the points after the first race in Darlington, but I like what he's doing. I believe he's a championship contender. Don't count him out at all. Logano, easily the best driver in stage 1.
Okay, I literally have 99% of what you just said written down in my notes. Yeah, I do. So, all right, so I'll go first in stage 2 here between Blaney, Elliott, Hamlin, Larson. Look, Larson to me is going to be the best of these 4 guys. I think Hamlin will be his biggest threat. I like Larson here. He was able to win this race. Back in the playoff race here last season, he was able to get the win. He's got the best driver rating by 12 points. To me, that's a pretty significant gap by 12 points. That lets me know he's really stinking good here. Wasn't his first ever win, too, at Kansas a handful of years ago? This guy loves Kansas, if I recall correctly.
It was Michigan, his first career win.
Michigan. Okay, track that's like Kansas. I do something like that. So, but he did win here in the playoff race last year. I got Larson. You've got him. Why did you pick him?
I picked Kyle Larson because I'm starting to like what I'm seeing from this 5 team. At the beginning of the year, they won Las Vegas a mile and a half, but since then they fell off, and they picked up their mojo at Watkins Glen after they got that crucial win. They built up some momentum since then besides Daytona. I like what I saw in Darlington. I don't think he's going to win a race by any means, but I believe this stage 2 performance is going to be good enough to win this group. And just for all the folks out there playing the NBC Predictor app here, I'm playing on points. I'm trying to maximize the points I get weekly. And in case you didn't know, the winner of each stage gets 10 points, and the second closest one gets 5. Kyle Larson, at the bare minimum, will get you 5 points.
Yeah, yeah. At worst, Hamlin beats him, and yeah. I liked his fight last week. He seems to have a little bit of a tough luck. Seems like maybe the last 10 or so weeks, but boy, I like the fight there in that 5 team. So went with him. All right, we got a difference. So you've got to justify Harvick, and I've got to justify Kyle Busch between Kyle Busch, Cindric, Harvick, and Suarez. I picked Kyle Busch. Again, Toyota's dominated the spring. I kind of told you, though, how the breakdown the last 3 races doesn't mean Toyota's going to come here again and have the dominant, but I like that. I think he's been coming on. He's got the contract situation over, but what's the best way to kind of either put the negotiating terms in your favor, give you maybe more powers to go out and perform? Really strong last week. Look, he was 20 laps away from winning that race. I don't believe Eric Jones would have had the pace to beat him. I thought him and Truex were the better cars. Just unfortunate, his engine blew right there. I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. He was 3rd here last time. So, all right, Kyle Busch for me. You got Harvick.
Yes, I got Kevin Harvick, but for all the fans out there, stay tuned for a Kyle Busch announcement. I am 100% sure by the time we film next Wednesday, there will be an announcement. Mark my words, there will be an announcement. I'm expecting it to be RCR, but which driver he will replace is quite unknown. But there's also the ability for them to go out and buy another charter, but that's for a whole nother video. But enough said there. Kevin Harvick is going to be my guy here. He's won here in Kansas numerous times here in the past. You can never count him out. He's kind of hot right now. Besides Darlington, he was on fire there. Daytona had a chance to come home in 2nd place, but NASCAR decided to restart it, and they towed him back to the garage. Very crazy there in Daytona. but he's been very consistent in the month of August. And I'm liking what I'm seeing from this 4 team right here. I think they'll win the Stage 3 group.
I'm assuming they're not going to do Dillon dirty. So you really think they're going to give Reddick the boot a year early? Or you think they're going to boot him out? You really think they're going to give him the boot?
I believe since they had so much invested in Tyler Reddick, and for him to go behind back without telling anybody, and for Richard Childress to find that Reddick was leaving the team via Twitter, I think that's not a good look at all. They'll boot him, definitely. And like I said a couple of weeks ago when they won Daytona with the 3 car, he gave no props at all to Tyler Reddick. So they still have beef. I promise you. They're not getting along at all. And Kyle Busch replacing him seems more likely by the day. And Adam Stern even mentioned it. The leading candidate is RCR.
All right, cool. You think by next week. All right, sweet. Well, by my assumptions, he will announce that contract coming off a win. I've got Kyle Busch doing it. I'm telling you, he's going to be able to put these distractions behind. I was really impressed with how he's been doing lately. Really impressed with how he kind of put everything off to the side as he entered Darlington. And again, he was 20 laps away. I mean, credit Eric Jones. He did good, but he's not beating Kyle Busch if Kyle Busch doesn't have those issues. In P2, I've got Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin's really strong here each and every single time. I'm expecting maybe the Toyotas to reproduce what they did back in the spring. And then Kyle Larson, we've kind of talked about his pedigree here, so I'll go with Kyle Larson. You've got Steady Eddie, I call him here, Joey Logano. I like that pick. You got to be a little nervous. We're going to talk about a car that dropped off last week. He was strong, and he dropped off in Stage 3.
I think Logano is going to have great race pace and great long run speed. I believe the long runs will be key here in Kansas, and Logano will go to victory lane for the 3rd time this season. He won Darlington, he won Gateway, and now he's about to win Kansas and lock himself into the round of 12. And second place will be Kevin Harvick. Not going to advance himself into the round of 12, but I believe he will be above the cut line heading into Bristol. Third place will be Martin Truex Jr. Kind of irrelevant here, but Truex P3.
Do you think anybody, whether it's Logano, Busch, or one of these other 16, do you think anybody else outside of the automatic bid or whatever you call it, the automatic spot, because they're the winner and they take charge of it, do you think anybody join them on points? Or do you think we'll have, only one person locked in as we head to Bristol?
I believe that the only driver that can do that, if not by not winning, is Logano. And he's so darn high up there in points. Elliott lost a lot, so Elliott's too far behind. But I think Logano's the only one that can do that. So there you go there. Kind of a boring answer. Not what the fans were looking for, because they're wanting their driver to get locked into the next round as soon as possible. Because you do not want to go to Bristol stressing out.
Well, I was going to say, and you saw at Darlington, anything can happen, whether it's a wreck like Chase Elliott or, God forbid, you have a mechanical problem. And now you're going to get on a short track where there's just more chaos and more issues. Yeah, you don't want to go to Bristol and be fighting for the round of 12. That's going to be an uncomfortable spot for that entire team of that car. Many of those cars are going to be in that position, to be quite frankly. So, all right, I looked about 10 minutes before we jumped on here. Fox Bet Super 6 still doesn't have the questions up, so we're not going to be able to run through those questions and those answers. So we'll just kind of leave it right here with the NBC Sports Predictor app and the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway. Another track that I'm looking forward to it. We talked about it last week. We've already talked about it today. You're just going to get more chaos, more drama. It's just what you're going to get in the playoffs. And even if everything that happens is just magnified that much more because you're obviously in the playoffs. So it's all, the intensity is ramped up. I can't wait to watch it unfold.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend here. I expect some great racing, and I expect a lot of controversy to come out from Kansas as we head into Bristol next week.
All right, cool, William. All right, that's it. And we will come back next Wednesday, and we'll go ahead and look forward to Bristol. It's the cutoff race before the round of 12. We'll see where everything leads to it. And we'll, of course, make sure we preview the race there down at Bristol. All right, enjoy the Hollywood Casino 400, and we'll talk with you next week, William.
All right, man.